that doesn't that summarize most of humanity?
Yeah, I'm afraid so.
Yeah. And so that's why we're having these conversations, to understand how to actually experience ourselves, to be engaged in the process. And when we have these internal signals, we can do something different about them. And I think this one particularly, this fighting who we are, fighting where we are, is so, it's easy to, like you were just saying, it's easy for that to become almost natural or feel natural, not become natural. It's easy to tell ourselves that feeling that way is natural because most of the world operates in that way. And if you want to be that, I don't know what the number is, let's say 1 to 5% that does something different, these conversations are what we're helping expose this side of ourselves so that we can start to do something different.
Well, hoping is true. Look, while we're talking here, we have X number of listeners, okay? Let's say a certain proportion of them are really listening with focus. Mm-hmm. They're actually experiencing what we're talking about and experiencing it within themselves, how they may or may not perpetuate their own suffering by being attentive to it or denying it or disregarding it and so on. So we have those listeners. Everything that we're talking about is a call to respond. Yeah. Right? Every experience keeps an impression on us that we continue to respond to consciously or subconsciously. Right? And so it's a call for action. Mm-hmm. If you hear from what we're talking about, oh, that's about me too. I tend to disregard my own inner signals and so on. You can do something about it. Yeah. That recognition that you're doing this and that is the cause of pain and dysfunction of your life is a signal to do something about it. Yeah. And you can right there make a determination. Okay, when we're done with this talk, when I'm done listening to this, I'm going to do something about it. I don't know exactly what yet, but I'm determined to do something about it, and I'll work on that right away.
Yeah. And that decision, I think, because often when you feel like when you're doing something new also feels scary or, I can't do this, those kinds of thoughts come up. But what I have, again, noticed in my own life is when I make the decision, I'm going to do something different. I'm showing up differently. I'm taking action in some way. Even if I don't have all the answers, just the decision to do that starts to soften me, open me up, help me see things that maybe I didn't see before. And it helps me to, I call it taking a stand for myself when I'm doing things like that.
Only if you follow through.
Right.
Not if you have that momentary emotion or feeling, which may be completely true, but if you don't act upon it, it's not going to help you.
Right. And so let's talk about actions. Because, this obviously actions are going to be dependent on the person in the situation. But to me, we often know what we should do. We just don't do it. Or sometimes the step seems too small. They seem pointless. Oh, what's that going to do when it seems so small? But, often, again, in my own life, the smallest steps is what have led to the biggest changes because I was willing to take the small step.
Well, I think the technique that a lot of people use is the things that they know to be true but disregard. It's automatic. They just put it into a general mental murk. Yeah. Right? So even if there springs up the energy, the inspiration, the spirit coming up and say, I'm going to do something about that. You throw it into a mental murk and the busyness that you have, busyness that you have set up, it's automatically taken care of, not done. Yes. By not being done, Yes. Yes. And that comes back to what we've been talking about, that people need to learn to appreciate themselves. Yeah. Respect themselves, care for themselves enough to listen to their inner signals and to respond to them, not to dismiss them.
Yes. And I would also add trust themselves with this too, because
trust is an absolute integral part of that. Yes. But you only build up trust. The reason you don't trust yourself is because you haven't responded to yourself. Right. If that's the case. right?
Right.
Because if you respond to yourself, then inside it says, okay, I'm being heard, and it is considered important enough to make a change with. Great, I'm on my way, you know?
Yes, I do. And those, again, we're talking about action here because the awareness is definitely necessary. It's a two-part, it's just, and there's a lot more to it, but at a simplified level, what we're talking about today is having that awareness when we're in a circumstance that we don't like, we're not happy with, whatever it might be, having the awareness that something isn't working for me. I'm feeling these internal signals, and then being willing on the other side of that to take action and do something different about it. And the action can come in many forms. It comes in many ways. But as Erhard was just saying, that this being willing to love yourself enough to do this, being willing to take those steps, and being able to,
sorry,
that's okay, being able to trust yourself as you do these things, to understand that your internal spirit wouldn't be calling you towards these things if it wasn't the right thing for you to do, right? And sometimes it feels, I know I felt I've made things up, or why would this matter? But when I'm willing to take those steps, that's where the greatest change has happened.
All this requires for the individual to have a relationship with herself. That I've said now, the fourth time today, but I always will say, to have a relationship between your mind, feelings, emotions, senses, intellect, and intuition with you.
Yes.
So, but in order to have that relationship, you need to value yourself sufficiently to not only want to have the relationship, but insist on being in it as a constant. Not now and then. You don't have a love affair now and then. I'll call you sometime when I feel like it. No, this is with you all the time. That fundamental relationship doesn't exist in many people.
Right.
It doesn't happen by itself in the majority of people. It needs to be cultivated through understanding, through knowledge, through experience. You don't get that by just waiting for it. Right. You don't get that by even wanting it. You get it only by purposefully dedicating your time and your energy to cultivate that awareness.
Yes.
Again, but there you need to find yourself important enough to want to cultivate a relationship with yourself,
Yes.
And if you don't, then you can look at that. That's as a fundamental cause for the suffering that you do.
Yeah. And I totally agree. And this is one of those things, cultivating the relationship with yourself, valuing yourself enough to do this. Only you can do that. No one else can do that for you. And you can take all the classes, you can read all the books, you can do all the things, go to all the courses or the different events. But if you're not willing to sit with yourself and really actually spend the time to be with yourself and be in a relationship with yourself, all the other stuff is just busyness, like we talked about, and keeping ourselves busy and distracted so we don't actually have to face the person that we are.
Well, but you see the defense most people come up with, but I don't know how to do that. Well, what do you do about something that you don't know how? Well, you Google it.
Yeah.
Have Google tell you. No.
Yeah.
There are some things you can't Google becoming a successful brain surgeon.
Mm-hmm.
You can Google it, but it won't help.
Right.
It won't do it for you. And so you find in all of the real books from real knowing people, they always tell you, whether it's in business or anything else, go to somebody who has a proven success record of knowing,
yes,
of knowing the truth, knowing the fundamentals, having walked the path by herself or himself. Somebody who's been on that path and gone to the promised realm,
right?
The realm of light and living in joy.
Yes.
You need to have that. You need to have a teacher for that. And for that, you deserve to find the best.
Yes. And you have a lot of books on this topic as well that you've written over the years, and as we talked about at the beginning, your your approach and what we've talked about on so many of these episodes is that knowing you have to experience, you have to be willing, like you were just saying, if somebody says, oh, I don't know how to do this, to have this relationship with myself. Well, it starts with practice, and you just keep practicing and you just keep practicing, because if you're not willing,
you need to know the right practices.
Yes.
Not to just keep on practicing. That's important.
Yes.
Because you can find many teachers, you can find many psychologists and psychiatrists and guides and so on that help you to stay in your ego.
Yeah.
Because that makes you love the teacher, because, gee, I don't have to change. He's just affirming everything that I've been doing all of my life. Only he's putting pretty words around it, which I love. And now I can keep doing and I don't have to make any changes. That is a very normal response. And often those teachers we've had in the past people who were great gurus from India and so on, and they attracted people by the millions within 1 year, uniformly, they have been people who fed into that ego system.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm not saying there never was one, but the majority fed into the ego system and therefore became so popular. People would say, one thing they would always promise is, I'll do it all for you because I have the wisdom. All you have to do is be with me and give me all of your material wealth, which is standing in your way. Give that to me. I will handle it for you because I'm so big I can handle all of that material wealth. But just give yourself to me, trust me implicitly, and believe in me. Don't question anything, just believe in me. And that is how to become popular.
Right.
I say, don't believe me. Don't believe me. Because you need to experience it and know from within, and then be able to say, this is true.
Right.
Whatever you and I are talking about, Sloan, the listeners can right there experience. And there's an inner knower that says, yes, this talks about me. This is true about me. Then you know that you're really participating and you know somebody is really speaking the truth.
Right.
That's how you find a teacher.
Right. And as I'm hearing you talk about the other type, what came up for me also was searching outside of ourselves for somebody else to do something for us, versus what you're saying your teaching style is, don't believe me. I want you to know it for yourself. There's a completely different feeling internally when you think about those two different ways, because deep down, I think everybody knows the answer is not for somebody outside of us to, quote, take care of us.
Right.
But yet people
there's
fall
one
into
addendum to this. I want you to know for yourself, but I will help you to know for yourself.
Right.
Right now, we are talking in a way that people can experience what we're talking about. That way they can say, this rings true to me, or this I know from within me is true. Even if I haven't thought about it before, but I can know right now that this is true. Mm-hmm. So then I put this into my whole lexicon of truth that I want to live, that I will live by.
Right. Yes. And it goes back to what we talked about several times, those internal signals and recognizing those.
Right. And then when you do that, you will respect yourself.
Right.
You will trust yourself, and you will make yourself flourish.
Right.
It's inevitable.
Yes. And I mean, such a completely different experience in life versus the topic for today, talking about resisting our current circumstances. I mean, there are other options as to experience the world. And what we're talking about right here is how a person can do just that.
Yeah. You see, in physics, they speak about impetus, right? Mm-hmm. An impetus is a force that has an object go in the direction that it's traveling on and continue in that direction. And in order to change the course of that object, it takes a different force to to work again